Well, certainly thank you everyone for joining us for our monthly speaker series. We have Penda Howell, that's going to be our speaker. Penda is the CEO and co-founder of New Jersey Urban News, the most comprehensive Black news source in the Garden State. Through coverage of community news, politics, health, business, and many other topics, he and his co-founder, Dorothy Howell, are empowering New Jersey's African American community. And we have our co-founder and president, Maria Henkel, that is going to be asking him different questions. She is the president of the CEO Forum, recent MBA graduate from Rutgers, and a talented marketing expert in multiple industries. So with that, I'll give it over to Maria.
Thank you, Ryan. Yes, thank you everyone for joining us today. CEO Forum stands for Chief Entrepreneurial Officer. So this is the Entrepreneurial MBA Club for Rutgers Business School, but we are multidisciplinary and we invite all of you to join our club, follow us on social media. We also have a LinkedIn page. And we're going to be doing a breakout session after this event. So after we talk to Penda and have a Q&A, please stay tuned because we will be able to have a networking mixer and you'll get to meet other students and we'll talk about the event and other things going on. So hi Penda, how are you today?
I'm well, Maria. How are you today?
I am doing great. I'm so excited to have you here and I'm excited to have like your perspective on what's going on. And one of the things that I love to ask people and is what were your early days like as, you know, entrepreneurs? I feel like we all have kind of a little bit of a spark, an independent spark. And I want to know, like, how young were you? What was your mindset when you were in high school and kind of maybe had this entrepreneurial spark?
Well, thanks, Maria. So, oh gosh, the entrepreneurial spark, I think, started for me even before high school.
Really?
It did. I think it started for me when I was in grammar school, I think 6th grade, when I had my newspaper route.
Oh, wow.
So back then, and I'm telling my age a little bit, but who cares?
Right.
Back then, newspapers were delivered by local residents, right? Mm-hmm. And so you had to be responsible for a certain percentage of the cost of the newspaper, and then whatever you sold it to a subscriber for, the difference was yours.
Okay.
And you met with a regional manager from the newspaper company every Sunday morning to settle your bill, and whatever the difference was yours, right? And so for me, I thought it made a whole lot of sense to try and get as many subscribers as I could. So I think I had about 20 people in my neighborhood when I started the route. By the time I ended the route and gave it up, which was when I was going into my sophomore year of high school, believe it or not, I had close to 200 subscribers.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was, from what I'm told, it was one of the largest routes from an individual that they ever had. And so I think it started there for me. I realized really early on that if I maximized my my work time and put the energy into getting new subscribers, 75% of every subscriber that I got, that money would go in my pocket, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how it worked. Back then, the newspaper was $1 a week for
Right.
7 days. So 25% went to the newspaper company, 75% came to me.
Yeah, that's great. That's great as a kid. So I guess after that, you know, did you have more aspirations to continue to make money or study something specific? How did that inspire you?
So, you know, when I was in high school and all the kids were getting jobs at the mall, mm-hmm. and at Macy's and Friendly's and all those places, I actually took a commission job with a rug importer in Paramus, New Jersey.
Oh.
And every weekend, Friday night, and then all day Saturday and Sunday, we would load up this truck with handmade rugs and go to an auction house in New York.
Wow.
And my job was to help show the rug, explain the benefits of the rugs, handmade, machine made, Albasan, Nurasan. I learned all of this vernacular and lingo around handmade rugs when I was a sophomore and junior in high school.
Wow.
And every rug that was purchased, my partner and I, if it was a client that we happened to show the rug to, and we showed the rugs to everybody because it was just three of us. It was the owner and then me and my partner. We got 15% of every sale.
Oh, wow.
And those rugs were selling for $5,000, $2,000, some $10,000. And so in a weekend, while my friends were working at Macy's, right, and you know, making a couple of $100 for the week, you know, we were making close to $500 or $600 for a weekend.
Nice.
Doing this. And I did this through high school, latter part of my sophomore year, junior and senior year. So again, that entrepreneurial, betting on myself, looking at, you know, the variables with regard to compensation, commission versus hourly wages. And it just made a whole lot more sense to me, again, to take the risk and do this commission thing. I mean, there's no guarantees there.
Right.
But I thought, even if we sold one rug for $5,000, you know, he and I would split $750 for the weekend. Still is more than if I worked at the mall all week.
Yeah.
You know, and so it kind of continued there. And I actually did that for a number of years. When I graduated high school, I went to DeVry Institute, which is now DeVry University. And I went to school to study computer technology.
Okay.
I graduated school. Now, during school, I worked for a carpet and floor covering company part-time at night while I went to school during the day. And when I graduated school, Panasonic, which was in Secaucus, New Jersey, was hiring everybody from the school for $7 an hour to repair motherboards.
Oh, okay.
I just thought that was bananas. I just thought that was just absolutely crazy. You know, I said, you got to be kidding me that you want to pay me $7 an hour to do this work. And I got all these student loans and stuff. And no, I think you're just taking advantage of us. So I was blessed with the opportunity to take a full-time sales job with this company that I was working part-time for at night. And again, the compensation structure was commission. So you got to draw. So you'd have some guaranteed money coming in every week, but your draw was then replaced by commissions that you earned from selling carpets and wall-to-wall carpeting. And so you had to pay back that draw essentially, right? So if they gave you $500 a week, whatever commission you earned, $500 came out of that commission to pay back your draw, and the difference was yours.
Okay.
So I ended up working for that company for about 7 years and doing really well. You know, I segued into managing commercial accounts for this firm, doing carpeting in high-rise buildings, 10 floors.
Wow.
Selling handmade oriental rugs that were worth $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. And eventually, I think when I was about 24, 25, I became a regional manager for this company.
Okay.
With the goal of owning and operating my own store. That was the goal. The goal was for me to learn the ins and outs of the back end of the business, you know, accounting, marketing, billing, human resources, all that good stuff, so that I could open my own store. And so I worked for this company for about 8 years. Unfortunately, the company went under, and I never got an opportunity to open a store. I kind of went to work for another for another outfit when I was about 26 or yeah, right around there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to work for another outfit. Was a regional manager for them, managing stores in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And I did that for about a year. And an opportunity came my way to purchase a restaurant.
Oh,
And so that was my first foray into owning and operating my own business. I was 27 years old.
27. Wow.
I purchased a restaurant in Jersey City, New Jersey. And it was an operation that was already in business, but the owner was retiring and moving to Florida. He was a doctor, and the restaurant business was something that he was doing on the side with a partner. I came to know about this business because when I went to visit one of my stores in Hudson County, my store manager would always take me to this place for lunch. And I thought, wow, the food is great. The atmosphere is nice. Why would this guy sell this place? It's always packed when I come in here. You got to be kidding me. So when I heard he was selling the place, I said, James, please take me and introduce me to this guy. I know nothing about the restaurant business, but I'm interested in buying this place.
Yeah.
And so that's how it happened. That was my foray into owning and operating my own business. And so I eventually bought the restaurant, purchased the liquor license that came along with the restaurant.
Okay.
Lots and lots and lots of learning lessons there, and ended up owning and operating that place for about 2 years before I got rid of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the theme to our talk today is learning success from failure. So you've kind of hinted at this a little bit already. So tell us some about like a failure either in this area or another area that you feel like you grew from that experience.
Yeah, so failure is, I look at it today as such a tremendous learning opportunity. I think it's one of the best teachers.
Right.
Because when you look back on failure, you immediately recognize the mistakes and shortcomings, the mistakes you made and the shortcomings you have, and what you would have done differently to put yourself in a better position to be successful. And so I'll go back to that restaurant business. And number one, had no background information on the restaurant business at all.
Right.
I knew nothing about food, pricing food, margins, with regard to food, pricing out a menu, purchasing, and all of the perils involved with dealing with food vendors, alcohol vendors, all that good stuff. All required some knowledge, some resources, some experience in managing all of that type of stuff. I had none. And so I went into this thing blind, strictly with ambition and confidence, basically.
Right.
And so several mistakes I learned from this failure. One, to prepare yourself as much as possible. Do as much background research as you possibly can on the industry that you're considering going into. I would even argue that you should bring on a partner if you don't have the experience yourself. That is almost an expert in that field.
Right.
Somebody needs to be steeped in the knowledge of whatever that product or service is, from an operational perspective, from a front-facing relationship marketing perspective. Somebody needs to be steeped in that, and nobody was on my team. In fact, I had no team. It was me, and then I wanted to build a team as I move forward, which is just absolutely crazy. Secondly, it's important to understand the rules and the regulations as it relates to the state that you're in.
Mm.
Purchasing a liquor license for me at 26 years old was extremely difficult because, number one, I was a very young guy,
Mhm.
and you had to put 75% of the money up. And if you know anything about liquor licenses in New Jersey, they aren't issuing new liquor licenses. You have to buy an
Right.
existing one.
Right.
And so the first thing I had to do was get a very expensive law firm, because once I realized that this wasn't going to be an easy task for me, once I gave my money to the folks that own the license, I was already in too deep.
Oh, yeah.
And little did I know, there was all sorts of regulatory approvals that I had to go through to have the license put in my name.
Wow.
State regulations, federal regulations, background checks on me and my family. They wanted to know where the money came from.
Wow.
Was this young black guy a drug dealer?
Oh, no.
Was he a front for somebody? These are all,
Wow.
believe it or not, these are all the questions that I got.
That's amazing. You would
so-
never think that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. These are all the questions that I got
Wow.
when I went in front of the ABC board. And so I quickly realized that if I don't get an attorney to represent me and speak on my behalf, I'm going to be out of
Mhm.
$75,000. Even though I could show these people where my money came from. I mean, I've been
Mhm.
working forever and
Mhm.
just banking my money. And I'm married. My wife is in law enforcement. Doesn't matter. They did a background check on me, my wife, my father, my
Wow.
mother, all sorts of stuff. And so all of this prohibited me from opening the restaurant for 8 months. So let me back up for a minute. I had already signed the lease.
Yeah.
I had already given my money for everything, the license, the lease on the property, negotiated
Mhm.
contracts with vendors, and I couldn't open the business.
Mm.
They wouldn't allow me to, they wouldn't give me a CO until I had all of this information satisfied. And so so that's what I mean about rules and regulations as it relates to you and your state. I had no idea all of those things would be prerequisites for me to open this business under my name.
Right.
And so that was one of the costliest learning lessons, because I had to pay a lawyer. I'm paying a lawyer now all this money for 8 months before they would even give me another interview in front of the board.
Mm.
So I'm paying rent. I'm paying, I'm paying all the fees associated with owning and operating a business,
But it's
I
not
can't
open.
operate the business.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's got to be so difficult.
so there's a huge learning lesson.
Mhm.
So once I got over that hurdle and I was actually able to open the business and get in there, we started operating. I had a full staff, head cook, head chef, assistant cooks, and the whole gamut of waitresses and bartenders and all that good stuff.
Mhm.
And lasted for about I lasted for about another 13 months operating that business before I realized I was in way over. Well, I realized early on I was way in over my head,
Mhm.
but I was in too deep. And so I couldn't walk away.
Right.
But after operating it for about another 13 months, I figured I'd better try and get out of this thing with at least with my shirt on my back, or it's going to kill me. And so I
Yeah.
sold the license and I closed the business. So I lost an awful lot. All the investment that I put into the business, from buying walk-in freezers and equipment and all that stuff, because you get pennies on the dollar when you want to sell this stuff. I was
Yeah.
able to recoup about 75% of my cost on the liquor license that I paid for. That was $75,000. But everything else I lost. Everything else I lost, and was on the hook for all the other costs and fees with vendors. So
Mhm.
another lesson that I would caution folks is to be aware of your expenses and your budgets up front prior to going into your endeavor. Make sure you map out a plan. I should have mapped out a financial plan 24 months ahead. I should have
Right.
projected 24 months out.
Right.
And then backed my way into going into the business. I would have made a whole lot of decisions differently. I would not have signed leases. I would have done a whole lot of things differently. You know, it's very, very important to do that. It gives you a real clear picture of the financial position you need to be in. You want to make sure that you have enough capital to cover your expenses for the first 24 months, even if you really only need them for 12 months.
Right.
Project out 24 months. It's always better to be over prepared than under prepared. Another thing I would have done was sought out, like I said, an expert that was already doing this business and had already been owning and operating this sort of business, and try to talk to them and find out what was working for them, what wasn't working for them, get any suggestions, advice, guidance that I could have gotten from somebody that was an expert or was already doing this for a while.
Yeah.
So those are a couple of things. Those are a couple.
Yeah. So, wow. And I guess any one of us would probably be like demoralized, like, okay, I'm done being an entrepreneur. I'm going to go back to like corporate America or get a regular job. So what inspired you to move forward, and how did that experience bring you to where you are today with the New Jersey Urban News?
So yeah, I was that person that was demoralized and destroyed and said, forget this business thing. I'm going to work for somebody.
Yeah.
I was that person. And so,
yeah.
So that's exactly what happened. I went and got a job. And I went to my hometown newspaper that I used to deliver as a little boy. Once I closed the business, I said, you know, I need to take a step back. I was completely destroyed emotionally, completely demoralized, felt like I was the biggest failure on the face of the earth. I really didn't even want to see or talk to people for months. My wife says to me, I hid for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And I probably did, because I think I was depressed. You know, I walked away from a really good job at 27 years old, and I took this huge risk,
Right.
crashed and burned, and I failed. So I was scanning, you know, the job boards, and I saw this job with the newspaper company that I used to deliver as a little boy, and they were looking for a sales coordinator for their circulation department. And I said, you know what? I have no idea about the newspaper business from that perspective, but I knew I could do that job.
Yeah.
So I applied for it, and they hired me. And so that's what started my newspaper career. That's how I got into the newspaper business. So I was 27 years old, 28 years old, and I started on the circulation / distribution home delivery side of the newspaper business. And my job was to set up non-traditional partnerships for the newspaper. And the goal was to expand distribution of the newspaper through non-traditional means. And so that's what I did. And so one of the partnerships that I set up was a partnership with McDonald's in New Jersey. And I used I was able to partner with 6 McDonald's owner operators, and they allowed me to include the newspaper in their breakfast value meals and give the newspaper to clients that came through the drive-through to get value meals, breakfast meals in the morning. The newspaper was included with your value meal.
Oh, that's clever. Yeah.
And something that was never done before, I won a first place award with the New Jersey Press Association for this concept. And it since went on to create a whole new division at the company that I was working for. And that was my start, believe it or not, in the newspaper business.
Okay.
And so I did that for a number of years. And then they recruited me into the advertising marketing side of the business. And then I did that for a number of years. Fast forward, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, I run the gamut of the newspaper business, from marketing to relationship marketing to management, running different departments and divisions. And I was recruited for a newspaper in New York to head up their advertising division. And so I accepted that position. And I was VP of sales for this company for a number of years. And during that time, I affiliated myself, I involved myself with a bunch of trade organizations, newspaper trade organizations, right?
Yeah.
Networking. It's always important. Something that I always got, even as a young adult. And from those networking opportunities, it afforded me opportunity to consult for other newspapers.
Okay.
On some of the projects that I had been doing that a lot of companies couldn't get accomplished. And a lot of it stems from looking at things from a very non-traditional way. There's a certain blueprint for success back then with the newspaper business. You distribute your product through stores and via subscribers. And my perspective was always, you're missing a huge part of the market by not reaching retail customers where they are. And that was always my mindset when I was operating in this position. And so hence the McDonald's partnership. Where are people going in the morning before they go to work? They're going to pick up coffee. Dunkin' Donuts partnership. They're going through the drive-thru to grab a quick sandwich. You know, the partnership with McDonald's. And so there was a bunch of companies that started reaching out to me to ask me to help their teams figure out how to get this accomplished in their markets. And that turned into a small consulting business for me. So on the side, while I was working full time, I created a small consulting business on the side, and I was doing this consulting work on the side while I was working full time for the media company.
Right.
Did that for a number of years, and the company that I was working for, I helped them launch a variety of new verticals within their company, digital platforms, new print products. And I approached them about starting a new product that I thought would be a home run. And they were agreeable to it, but they wanted to own 100% of it.
Oh.
And so I said, well, yeah, great. That's not so fair. That's, you know, you want me to do all the work and you want to own 100% of it. I've been down that road before. That ship has sailed. So, no, that's not happening. So I did it on my own. Hence, hence NJ Urban News. But before NJ Urban News, I started a media buying and consulting firm called M News Newspaper Media Marketing Services, which still exists today. And that company specifically buys media, and we negotiate, and buy media for national brands and minority-owned media across the country. So if you have a company, let's take DoorDash, that wants to speak to a specific market in a specific area, and they're interested in reaching specific zip codes, and they want to speak to a specific demographic. My company does all the background work for DoorDash. We vet the publications, we negotiate the rates for them, we place the business for them, we track the business for them, we do the billing for them. We do all of the logistics for that company. And so that's another business that I have on the side that I do now. And so NJ Urban News was birthed, you know, out of me going to the company that I was working for and saying, hey, there's this void in the market that's ripe for exploitation. There's nobody else there doing this work here. I've done the research. There's a viable market here. I've had some preliminary conversations with potential marketers who are very interested in this market, and would be agreeable to considering a partnership if there was an environment created in this market. And so that's how NJ Urban News came to life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So how long has NJ Urban News been around, and how do you see it evolving since you started it?
So NJ Urban News was birthed 3 years ago.
Okay.
And it wasn't visible publicly because what we were doing behind the scenes was building out the editorial infrastructure.
Right.
And we were building out the back end business infrastructure, digital infrastructure, working with engineers to develop the platform. That takes quite a while, and it's fairly expensive. Took us almost 8 months to finally decide on and settle on the current design that you see now. This is about the third iteration of the platform that you're looking at now, and is the one that's public now. So about 3 years ago it started. We launched the front-facing or public-facing portion of the company, which is the website, newsletters, social channels, and all that good stuff, about 2 years ago. So we're about 2 years in now, fully functioning as a news and information platform for communities of color in New Jersey.
That's great. That's fantastic to hear. So yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
So we have a lot of students that are here with us right now, and some alumni as well. And most people have some kind of a entrepreneurial bent, or they're working at a company where they might be thinking of starting their own business someday. So if you were to do it again, what advice would you give yourself or our current students that are here today?
So, you've got to be somewhat of a risk taker, right? To be an entrepreneur. I'm of the opinion that it's something that you're born with. And it's not something that that's learned. There's an awful lot of people in this world that get handed businesses that aren't really entrepreneurs. I know several of them whose families started their business, and the businesses are very lucrative. But the businesses were handed off to the kids, and the kids had no real interest in it at all. I know several instances like that. Some of them are personal friends of mine. I think it's vitally important that you have a passion for whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
If you don't have a passion for it, if it doesn't bubble in your stomach, maybe that's not the business for you. I'm not saying that you shouldn't invest in that business after you've done your homework, but maybe that's not the business that you should be owning and operating, because you're not going to put your all into it. And owning and operating a business is a 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week job. It does not end. There's no end to owning and operating your business. There's always something that needs to be touched. There's always something that needs your attention. And then of course you've got to be involved in all the trades that your industry is in, because you've got to be in tune and on top of the new developments, the new things that are happening in your industry. You've got to be involved from what I like to call a balcony view. It's a 360 view. Balcony view, which is setting strategy for the company, establishing the vision for the company and your team. But then, there's the porter view, right? That's the view on the floor. That's the view from the person cleaning the bathrooms and taking out the trash at night. So you've got to be involved in every facet of that business from soup to nuts. And so it's important that you have a passion for it, because if you have a passion for it, it doesn't really become work. It's something that's enjoyable to you. and it's going to need to feel that way because it's going to require all your attention. You know?
Yes. Yeah.
But I would say, don't be afraid to do it. Embrace the fear, face it, and confront it head on.
Yeah.
The fear is good. Fear is good because it gives you pause.
Mm-hmm.
And it should give you pause. That pause should be your opportunity to cover all of the bases that you possibly can. Let me make this very clear. You're never going to cover all your bases.
Right.
You're never going to cover all your bases. Okay, so let me just make that very clear. I mean, I've been in the media business now for 24, 25 years. And even doing this, my own media business on the side, I still am confronted with stuff that how could I not know about that? How could I not see that? How could I not anticipate that? It's just going to happen. It's just going to happen.
Yeah.
It's the nature of business. So have a passion for it. Do as much background research on the industry that you possibly can, as much as possible, as much research as possible. And then, don't be afraid of the fear. Confront the fear. Recognize it for what it is. Treat it as a tool that's cautioning you to be careful and to make sure that you've done as much homework as you possibly can.
Right. That's great. That's really good advice. Thank you. And so, yeah, I want to close out here with, what are your future aspirations for your business and also yourself, and kind of, then we'll do a little lightning round of favorite things. How does that sound?
Yeah. So my aspirations now are to continue to grow both businesses that I'm currently running. I've just been presented with an opportunity to do something on a national scale for a trade organization that represents 200 some odd other newspapers. And so it segues nicely into the work that I do every day.
Right.
And so, and it also lends itself to the both platforms that I'm involved with every day with regard to media, relationship marketing, advertising, and outreach. And so my goal is to expand on the platform that we've established for NJ Urban News. We're continuing to build out the editorial infrastructure there, develop more original content, and build it out to be the #1 source of news and information for communities of color in New Jersey. And then I'd like to replicate this model in other markets that I see deficiencies in. But to first perfect the model that we're currently building in New Jersey. And then, have a real goal to create a not-for-profit arm for this business. Sorry about that. I have a real goal to create a not-for-profit arm to this business to expose inner city kids to the variety of careers that are available in the media business.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's tons, and they all lend themselves to entrepreneurship, from being graphic artists to production, to pagination, to photography, there's just so many. There's so many. And so it's important. It's important that these kids know about the behind the scenes careers that are very lucrative in this business, extremely lucrative. Even if you're not running your own business, you can make 6 figures very comfortably doing any number of these jobs behind the scenes for these media companies. And so I just think a lot of kids don't know about it. You know? And so it's important to me to expose as many kids to it as possible. So that's one of my goals in the long term, to create a foundation to expose inner city kids to careers that are behind the scenes in the media business.
That's great. Yeah, I love the idea of giving back to the community. And as an entrepreneur myself, I actually have worked a lot with a lot of nonprofits and small businesses, and my background is in design. I actually worked at the Dallas Morning News for
Oh my
several years,
goodness.
right out of right out of undergrad. So I did a lot of design work at the newspaper. So I 100% agree. There's a lot of opportunities.
So the Dallas Morning News is a really, really great company. DWF was a digital consumer-based platform. So you know all about that.
Yeah, I actually helped start their Spanish language newspaper. I was on the initial marketing and branding team, Aldea.
That's
the Spanish language newspaper. Yeah.
I know it.
So, so I completely agree. And actually, I encourage you to look into, and maybe after this call, we can talk more about it. But everybody on this call, look into FP Youth Outcry in Newark, New Jersey. Is actually a nonprofit that also has, it's started by someone that's in the music industry, and he was a musician, and he was like working on a music label, doing like hip hop music. And he also wanted to bring music to children of Newark. And so he runs that nonprofit. I've done a lot of work with them, FPU Youth Outcry. Okay. And he did it in response to, he was with his sons in New Jersey, in Newark, and his son had witnessed like a gunshot, you know, and I don't think anybody was hurt, but he had kind of this fear, and he was like, you know, Dad, I don't want to live like that. And he's like, yeah, you know, he's like, how can I teach my sons that there's another way to live, and that there's a better place for these kids to be at after school, so that they can learn things besides, you know, what it takes to live on the streets. Like, he wanted to create a safe haven for the kids in his community in Newark. And so this is kind of like an after school program. A lot of it is volunteer teachers that he's met throughout the music industry, and he's got a little music studio, and they do a podcast. So yeah, so look into that. But
that's great.
Yeah, and so that's really exciting to hear, because I always have a soft spot for the nonprofit and giving back to the community.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, just
another tidbit about the Dallas Morning News.
Yeah.
Some colleagues of mine about a year ago started a digital platform called the 19th.
Okay.
It's all led by minority-owned women.
Nice.
Hispanic and Black women.
Oh, that's so
check
interesting.
Check it out when you get a chance.
I will.
One of the principals is a really good friend of mine from the Dallas Morning News, who, same thing. She presented this opportunity to them. They wanted to own it. She said, no way, left and started their own. And very group of sharp women. The company, in a quick 13 months, is worth several $1 million already.
Wow.
That's
great.
how, yeah. Wow, that's
how exciting.
Small world.
All right. So have you read any books recently that you would recommend to our group that you love, that you would be like, you got to read this book?
You know, I'm involved in so much. You know, one of the books that I'm reading now, and it's funny you asked that, because I'm actually taking an executive leadership course to help me run and manage my businesses better. And it's the 16 personality types. By Linda Barons. Are you familiar with it? And
yeah, is it kind of like the Myers-Briggs, or?
It is.
Okay.
It is. And so one of the deficiencies that I've found, one of the deficiencies that I have as a leader, as an executive, is, you know, I'm a really good communicator when it comes to talking about the benefits of partnership, products, services, and being a visionary as it relates to relationship marketing and advertising. I am a very bad executive when it comes to giving people bad information or bad news, particularly staff members. And so I just don't do a really good job at it. I'm a softie when it comes to that. You know, I love people. I love all people. I want everybody to win. Everybody can't win. I want everybody to be successful. I want to do what I can to help as many people as I can. And I feel like I disappoint people when they're not successful, and I'm working with them. And so this book is helping me to sort of parse, where I can do a better job at communicating, and being an effective communicator, I should say.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Sounds good. And do you have a favorite movie?
Not really. Not really.
Really?
I'm a sports guy.
You're a sports guy. Then who are your teams?
Giants are my team.
Okay.
Giants are my team.
Giants.
I follow the Rutgers team. My wife's a Rutgers alum.
Go Rutgers.
So I follow Temple. My son's a Temple alum.
Okay.
I follow Northwestern. My daughter's attends Northwestern.
Yeah.
But I'm a Jersey guy. So
you're a Jersey guy, and having been in the restaurant business, what is a place that you love to go eat at? What would you recommend our students to try if they're in Jersey or locally? We have campuses in Newark and New Brunswick. You got anything you'd be like, hey, you got to go eat there?
So, well, in New Brunswick, and I think it's closed now, but there used to be this place where we used to go to get strombolis. I used to love that place. But anyway, now, I love the Chart House, and that's in Weehawken, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I love the Chart House. I love, there's a place in Deltas in New Brunswick. I love Deltas in New Brunswick.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I could think of off the top of my head.
Sounds good. Well, let's see if we got any questions coming in.
Sure.
From people here today.
And
Ryan, you want to field them?
Sorry, I was just gonna say the place with the strombolis, it wouldn't be Stuff Your Face, would it?
Stuff Your Face, that's the name of it.
It's still there, no?
Oh, is it still there? I thought it was gone.
I hope not.
Yeah, that's the place. That's the place.
Yeah.
Stuff Your Face. That's right. Just up from the hospital.
Yeah, amazing place.
Love
Awesome.
that place.
I've never been there. Now I have to go try it. All right. Anybody else? Let's see. Should we unmute people?
Sure, we can. I think that sounds like a good idea. Let's see if I can figure out. Yes. Let's see here. If I certainly see unmute all. Here we go. They all have to unmute themselves. But certainly, Penda, that was a great story. Some great lessons learned from the restaurant industry. And it's great how you tied back what you did later on in your career to what you did in childhood. And it is really interesting to look at kind of the same business from different perspectives.
I think the newspaper business was always my passion. Even as a little kid, we'd sit down for dinner at 6 o'clock every night, and that was the rule in my house. Everybody at the dinner table at 6 o'clock, but my mother would be terribly upset. And my father read the newspaper every night at 6 o'clock when he got home from work. And so naturally, it's something that, became a habit for me. So I think I had a love for the newspaper business from childhood. It just isn't something that I thought about as a career path as I became, a teenager. Everybody was talking about computers when I graduated high school, and I thought, I got to do something. My father wanted me to go into the service, into the military, because he's a military guy, and he thinks all men should go into the military. And no matter what else you do in life, you need to go into the military. And my thing was, I'm not cut out for that. So, you know, I'm going to go do this thing over here. But I was always in love with the written word and the newspaper business, just ingrained in me as a kid.
Excellent. Excellent. And it's interesting to bring up some of the personal sides. I feel like a lot of the times we talk about our journey through our career, starting a business, about the challenges that we face when we're trying to accomplish our goals. But it's also, I think, important to think about the support structure that we have from our family, from our personal side, and then the challenges. I mean, those are intertwined too. I'm sure there were personal challenges you had too, as you hit different failures on the business side, or as you go through those things, how does that affect on the personal side? So, you know, it's.
Yeah, really good point, Ryan. I think, you know, there's a whole part of my story that speaks directly to that I didn't even go into, because we could be here for hours talking about it. But when I bought that business, I also just got married. And we were about to purchase a house when this opportunity to purchase this business was presented to me. And my wife gave me the okay to put purchasing the house off to buy this business. So you can imagine how I felt after the business failed. I'm like, it's a whole nother story, So yeah, impacts your family for sure.
Yeah, team effort. It's a team effort. And then you have Dorothy as your co-founder of your newspaper too, right? So she must have been on board with things all along the way.
Oh, are you kidding me? I would have such a headache if she wasn't on board. But you know, it's my wife's an operational executive for the state of New Jersey and has been for 30 years. It's a real shortcoming with me. I don't want to be bothered with operations. I'm a visionary person. You know, I visualize. I learn visually. I relate visually, and I enjoy coming up with the concepts and implementing them. The stuff behind the scenes really bother me. I don't want to get tied down with bookkeeping and Excel spreadsheets, you know, and QuickBooks and all that stuff, and setting up structure for staffing and HR, and that's what she does for a living for the state of New Jersey. So it was just a natural for us to partner in this business, and it's a perfect marriage almost, because that's what she is steeped in, and that's what I hate to do, you know, so it's perfect.
You know, and that brings up a really interesting point. We always talk about how when you're starting a company, it's really important to have a diverse team that has different perspectives. And I can imagine your personality and then the way you describe your wife's personality, you can have some very different perspectives on things. And I'm sure there have been times when you've had conflicts. Can you shed some advice on how do you go through those conflicts? How do you manage those conflicts so that you can come out as successfully as possibly can? And I'm sure it's a learning experience. There are times when you saw failure through that, and you know, it made a wrong decision, or it could have been handled better. But I'm very curious about that personal side and that relationship side, even when you're talking about two business colleagues working together.
Yeah, so I think, you know, the first thing that you've really got to recognize and be cognizant of is ego. Because if you aren't, it'll kill you, your relationship, and your business, right? You cannot look at things and take them personal. If you've got trust and confidence in your partner or your partners, you've got to you've got to allow people to operate in the space that they're experts in. I may have a thought, an idea or opinion on how something should roll out, how we should implement something, a policy we should institute. But it may just be from prior experience and intuition. Whereas my partner is trained to do this and has been doing it for 25, 30 years. I got to back my ego up. I got to get that out of the way. And so once you get the ego out of the way, honestly, everything else falls into place, because now it's not about what you know or know more or less of, what I might know more or less of. It's about what's best for the company. And as long as that is the focus and you're not taking things personal, that's half the battle. You're ahead of the game there. Get the ego out of the way.
Good advice. Absolutely. And certainly it's a tough thing to do. I try to do it. And then there's always the flip side of how do you work with somebody who has that ego? And then how do you, I don't want to address, how do you approach that?
Right.
Because,
it's difficult because my wife and I have two totally different personalities. And as I said, she is she's an executive with the judiciary in New Jersey, court executive, very strong type A personality, who's used to leading teams of 300 and 400 people, and is not really used to being told what to do and or how to do it. Well, I'm the media person, and I've been doing this for 25, 30 years. You got to listen to me over here. But so you got to understand the personality that you're working with. And there's a bit of massaging that's necessary, again, to decompress any situations that might come up, and to make sure that there's room for everybody to effectively communicate how they feel, what they feel, how they feel. And again, keeping in mind that it's all for the betterment and the benefit of growing the company and moving the company forward. But it's not easy. It's hard.
Yeah. Thanks, Penda. Thanks for all of your insights. You definitely speak the truth. I know a lot of us can relate to the stuff you're saying with egos, and we have to kind of know ourselves, and be self-aware to be successful as well. So yeah, it's definitely a journey and a process, but we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you,
Maria.
for your time.
I want to say something.
Oh, we have Joyce here. Joyce,
Hey,
Joyce.
Hey, Penta, thank you for sharing your story with us, and it's very important to hear someone else's journey, right? It helps us along. And there's three things that you talked about. One about failure and ego and your support system. And I think that's so important in anything that you do, keeping those things in check. And I was reading the other day, Ray Dalio with Bridgewater. He said the people that he has the most respect for are people who fail well. And the reason for that is you learn from your mistakes and you change your behavior. So failing it's a part of the success. It's a part of the journey. And having your wife, your support system, to be with you during that 6 months when you were like trying to gather yourself, and that's so important as well. Yeah. And the other thing that I just think it's amazing, and you'll always be a success, is you're constantly learning. You're constantly trying to be better, right? And you give room to other people to learn, which in turn allows you to learn and broadens your horizons. So I thank you. Thank you for sharing your story and your motivation. You definitely motivated me. So
thank you, Julie. Thank you. Appreciate those comments. One thing that I'd like to just touch on really quickly is something that Joyce just brought up, was the fact, that you know, it took a support system to get me back on my feet after I failed. And it's so true. And sometimes your sources of strength will come from areas that you least expect. My wife's gynecologist, believe it or not, when my business crashed and burned, because that's how I define it. Looking back at it now, I look at it through the lens of success because I failed. But it was hard for me to look at it that way back then. And so I went to the gynecologist one day with my wife during the time that I wouldn't leave the house for 6 months. And just to get me out of the house, she says, "Why don't you come to the doctor with me?" Well, turns out her doctor knew about it. She had been talking to the doctor about it. And so after her appointment, he asked me to come into his office. And I thought, really weird. Why would this guy, he's a gynecologist, what is he asking me to come into his office for? So I just thought it was really weird. So anyway, I went and he says, "Sit down for a minute. I just want to talk to you about something." And I said, "Yeah, sure. You know, what is it?" And he says, "Listen, your wife told me what happened with the restaurant. Let me explain something to you." He said, "You see all of this that I have right now? It took me 6 chances to get to this." He said, and this guy's a doctor with privileges at Hackensack Medical Center and all other places. He said, "It took me 6 failures to get this business. So you did this one time. So get up, get out of the bed, get back on a horse and do it again." You know, and I thought, man, it gave me such a source of encouragement and inspiration, you know, to get back on my feet and just face the world again. So thank you, Joyce. Very good point. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Joyce. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so any final words or questions before we bid farewell to our fabulous guest today, Penda Howell? Feel free to put it in our chat box here if you'd like to ask a question. If not, we will thank him for his time. It's been lovely.
Please visit njurbannews.com and sign up for our newsletter.
Yes, absolutely.
And if I could ever be of assistance to any of you all in any way, feel free to reach out to me via email. I'm happy to help.
Great. Thank you so much, Penda. And we'll have his information available after this chat. And we do have a recording of this meeting, so we'll have that available for you and up on our Slack channel as well. So if any of you want any information, you can reach us on our Facebook CEO Forum for Rutgers CEO Forum, or our email is rutgers.ceo.rsvp@gmail.com.
Awesome.
And we also have the LinkedIn. Krishna just put it in the chat. Thank you, Penda. And we'll let you go. We're going to do our breakout sessions now. If anybody wants to stick around and do an informal chat, we'll be doing that. Have a great day. Thanks.
Okay, have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Penda.
Thank you, Penda.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Penda.
Be well.
You too.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.